So my name is Tammy Tillman. I'm co-president of Pax River Quilters Guild in Southern Maryland. We've got 97 members. Usually we have about 45 to 50 that come to our in-person meetings. 9 of our members do not have computers or email, and quite a few of them have flip phones still. Our first Zoom meeting that we had, we actually got 32 on board, which I was very proud of. I know a lot of guilds are using Facebook in conjunction with Zoom, but because our guild has less than 25% of our guild members on Facebook, we decided to make Zoom our priority as opposed to do Facebook Live or anything like that. We use Facebook a little differently now. We've added things like Free Pattern Friday and Work in Progress Wednesday, and are really pushing an ongoing show and tell there. We've done 5 board meetings and 1 guild meeting, and have done tons of researching. I probably have, between my college friends and family, done an average of 5 Zoom meetings a week, which is crazy. Our guild uses my personal $15 a month membership. I know some guilds are able to get their own, but we have had a very large expense come up insurance-wise, adding some additional insurance. So we decided that they would just use my account. I know some guilds also need to go to the slightly more expensive plan because we have over 100 participants. So to get people on, our first challenge was to get people using different technology, skill levels and comfort levels, and different devices all on at the same time. So we ended up creating a multi-page document that outlined the different ways to join using the different devices, and it included a section for what to do for bad connectivity, such as, turning off your video in the middle of it if you're not able to hear, that kind of thing. Hardwiring yourself in instead of using Wi-Fi, that kind of thing. We sent this document out through our newsletter. It went along with the meeting IDs and passwords. And then we also sent it out a few days beforehand as a reminder, so that we found out with previous board meetings and things like that, if you send it out too early, all of a sudden the last minute, 20 minutes before your meeting, you have everybody calling you, I can't find it, I can't find it. We held 2 practice sessions. Each were 2 hours long, and we did it about 3 days before the meeting. That way people could log in as many times as they wanted to. We had several. The first time had a few glitches, and then got in the second time beautifully and decided to log in 2 and 3 more times. And we just sat there and talked about all the different parts of the toolbars, where they could find the stop and start video, the renaming, the muting, the speaker views, and things like that. And we answered any questions that they had about how our meeting was going to proceed. We selected the mute option for everyone upon entering. We had done other meetings where we tried to do it and just click the button once people started coming in, and then we would have people in the middle sit there go, oh, I just got in, yay, and you could hear this excitement in the background, as opposed to them coming nice and quietly into our meeting. So we do that for all of our meetings now. I used the waiting room functions, and we checked off each person's name as they came into the waiting room. We checked it off on a roster. So therefore we could have an attendance record, and we also would then have a list that we could cut up and use for door prizes at the end. You can also use the manage the participants list once everyone is in, because in general, that list is going to be alphabetized. If someone has an issue, a question, or clicks on one of the little buttons, it might bring them up to the top, but in general, it is alphabetical. Before letting the members in, I did a screen share that had our own welcome sign on it, and it gave them basic instructions on what to do. And I'm going to do a screen share right now and show you what that looked like. So it basically told them to please use the chat button, and where it was, that it's on the toolbar, and that's where they could ask their questions, and reminded them to leave their microphones off unless they were asked to turn them on. And that way we didn't have a lot of background noise going on. And that if they were on a device other than a phone, to please look and see what their name was, because a lot of times it'll come in as T's iPad, and we don't know who that is to be able to take attendance. So we asked them to do that. And we added, since that first meeting, that last line that says this meeting will be recorded, so that they have an option. And we tell them as soon as we get everyone in, we then remind them, we're getting ready to start the meeting. We will start recording. If you do not want your face shown, please turn off your video. And also make sure that your name is your first name and your last initial. We're not planning on putting this out as a YouTube or anything like that. We're going to keep it private, but that way, just in case somehow it ended up going out someplace, it doesn't have anyone's name on it. Excuse me. I just have to get back to my sheet. There we go. Okay, so we ended up using that box to give them those basic instructions, but later on, we plan on using it. If we start using breakout rooms, for example, we can post there a subject that we plan on discussing, and it'll give them a few minutes while they're sitting there waiting for the meeting to start to think about the kinds of things that they could talk about, whether it's their favorite technique or their favorite place they've ever vacationed, that kind of thing. It also could be a place to remind them we're going to be doing a live show and tell. Please go get your quilts and have them ready. It saves a lot of time. When it came time for the meeting to start, I then stopped that screen share that I had up of that and turned my video on and my microphone, and we started our meeting. We had a COVID disclaimer that we put out about meeting person in person. I don't know about where each of you live, but Maryland is, at least until now, it's been a little stricter than some areas. So we had something about that. And then each board member and chairperson had been emailed an entire agenda. Normally, they just prepare their own report, but this time we sent out a whole list with the exact order so that people could be prepared and be ready to turn their microphones on. So we didn't have to spend a lot of time going, you know, Carolyn, microphone, we can't hear you. Each item that a committee person was going to share, most committees didn't have anything, but some did, like membership had pictures of the door prizes that they wanted to share. So if someone in membership had it ready to go, they also sent a copy to either myself or to one of my vice presidents who was helping me. And that way they had backup. If their computer decided to have issues, we had a backup place to go to do that sharing so that we didn't miss an opportunity to get information out or to share something. And each member of leadership was able to give their reports. Attendees used the chat function to ask questions, and we'll have two co-hostesses or hosts, and they will use, I guess you'd call it a chat moderator. So they're going to watch the chat area, so whoever is speaking doesn't really have the time to speak and watch for questions. So they can alert the speaker at a pause. They can say, oh, I see that we've got a couple of questions, and there can be a pause in the discussion so that questions can be answered. And sometimes the moderators or even another attendee can just go ahead and answer it directly without it even having to be brought up to the speaker. So there's a little less disruption that way. And that way it worked extremely smoothly. So we decided that we were going to use McCall's quilting DVD set that I had bought at an auction sale last year. And we decided we had to get permission. So I contacted Golden Peak Media and they gave me permission. So one of the things that they ask us to do as part of that is to do here it is, a disclosure statement saying that this is where it came from, giving them credit for it. And it also, I had on there that we sought permission and were given it because we do have several ladies who you don't even have the chance to tell them, yes, I have copyright permission before they are all over you going, did you get it? Did you get it? So, and I got it very easily. I used information off of the back of the DVD and sent an email through their website, just using their contact using their contact us, and it was very, very easy. I didn't even know who I was getting, probably just some general information person, but they forwarded it the same day they got it, and a lady came back to me and asked for the names of the DVDs and their, was it ISBN numbers? And there wasn't one associated with it, but there was a little number on the back of each one. So I typed up 50 DVD names and 50 numbers, sent it off to them, and they gave us permission to use all of them as long as we do not do any recording of it. So if we're going to record one of our meetings, we will record up until the time we do that presentation of the DVD. We will stop and then have a second recording for the second half. So they'll know that when they go to look at it, wherever we're going to store it and however we're going to show it to them, those who missed it, that there will be two halves of it. We have one speaker in November who's willing to still present. Two of our other presenters for this fall have already asked to be moved to spring. So we're going to be doing a bunch of those DVDs. We're also going to be doing some demos, some live, some not. We have several people who said they would do it, but they were nervous about doing it live. So what we decided to do with them is to get them in a meeting by themselves. And it can be just the 40-minute long one, free one. And they are going to sit in their house using 2 cameras and film it. And then they'll watch it. And if they're not happy with it, they can delete it and do it all over again. And this can either be saved directly on your computer, or it can go to the Zoom cloud. If it goes to the Zoom cloud, you get a link that you can then send out. So the only people who can see it on the Zoom cloud are those that receive that link. You just have to be careful that when somebody agrees to do that, that they know that somebody in the guild may pass that link on to somebody else who might show it, that kind of thing. So they need to be okay with the fact that it might not stay as private as we intend for it to. So we've been able to do our block of the month. I don't know if is a monthly mini something all of you do? Okay, a monthly mini in our guild, because I've never been a member of another guild, so I didn't know that if you did this or not. A monthly mini is a smaller project that somebody does and donates, and we do a raffle for it. Usually it's a table runner or a wall hanging or a casserole caddy or something like that. And then we once a month will do a raffle for them. We've still been able to do our door prizes, like I said, by using the roster. And when people come in, the list of attendees, and do a door prize. We've shown the pictures of what they can choose from. We had little cards sitting in front of them and numbered them 1 through 4. And even one person did not have audio working that night, so she held up 3 fingers and said, "I want number 3" when she won. We are going to be doing small challenges where instead of doing like our normal President's Challenge, which is a 6-month-long challenge, we're going to do a month-long one. The one that we're doing for this month is a quote. You pick a quote from a book, song, movie, or a poem that inspires you, and do anything that you want. The sky's the limit, 12 by 12 to 24 by 24. And you can tweak those dimensions. It could become a table runner if you want, whatever you want to do. They're going to email us in pictures, and we're going to make a slideshow using Google Drive and send everyone a link for it through the newsletter. But before that newsletter comes out, we'll actually be able to show them at the meeting, and then we will draw a winner from it. And we have a quilt kit that we've set aside to do that. And we're going to try to do that like every other month. People are really excited. The goal of that was that we interviewed people in our guild. We got over 50 of the 97 members interviewed to find out what their expectations were, what they would want to see in the way of safety measures and the environment outside before we would go back to regular meetings. And one of the biggest things that they said while we've been in captivity, if you want to call it that, is that they've had no motivation. They've had no inspiration, no desire to sew. So we wanted to start doing some small, very short things so that, because right now it seems like everything is just going on and on forever. We wanted something short so that they could jump in and enjoy it, and it was done quickly, and then we could do another one to get the inspiration going, to get the juices flowing. We're even going to be able to, if we do, we have a challenge that is left over from before COVID. We were supposed to vote at our next meeting, and that didn't work out. So we're finally going to be able to vote on that. We're going to use Google Drive to show pictures of the quilts, and then Jot Forms to make a ballot. And what will happen is they'll get through the email, through the newsletter, a link to the Google Drive files that have the photographs of the quilts in it. And then the Jot Forms will create a very simple ballot that has 2 questions in it. And the photographs are in the Google Drive are just going to have a letter of the alphabet or a number with it, because there's 2 different categories. In the Jot Forms ballot, they'll vote for 1 letter and 1 number. And Jot Forms sends you an email every time someone votes. So I will immediately start getting the tallies, and we will be able to then announce winners and finally get this behind us. I think all the future ones we do are going to be based on participation as opposed to voting, because the voting online like this is a little bit harder to do. We hope to do some live show and tells coming up, but one thing that we're experiencing is very bad lighting in the rooms of most of the homes. Like, I see all of you have got very good lighting. I can see the pretty quilt behind Marilyn, that kind of thing. But some of the people coming to the meeting, their faces are so dark, you can't even tell if they're smiling or frowning. So we have to work on that before we can go to that level. Because we do have a lot of very active people who are doing our philanthropy quilts. Some of the tips that I came up with are that you really need to try, if you can, to hardwire your computer to your router if you can. It really helps you with your connectivity. I have both a 6-foot and a 35-foot Ethernet cable. They're not expensive at all. I think my 35-foot one was like under $15, and I got it off of Amazon. Mine was what's called a Category 5E, and my guess is that's what yours would be as well. And it's based on it being a laptop. If it's a Mac, you might be a 6. You'd have to look at the descriptions when you go to buy it on Amazon, and they're usually pretty good about telling you what the cable is supposed to be used for. I did need to get a USB adapter for it. I think that cost about $6 at Best Buy. And those 2 together have helped tremendously. I was in a class 2 weeks ago, and I got dropped 3 times. And since then, I've been on it, and I haven't been dropped once. So it's helping a lot. The other thing that I have gotten is, if you can see this, this is a USB, what do they call it? A USB adapter. So this takes it from 1 USB plug on your computer to 4. So now I have the ability, I can plug in an external DVD drive. I can plug in 2 cameras. I can plug in the little adapter for my mouse. And I'm not going to be fumbling in a meeting trying to unplug and plug things and starting to get, you don't need that extra stress when you're hosting a meeting. Then we're planning to screen share multiple things at these meetings. And the one thing that we found out, and I wish I had known this ahead of time, so I had a lot of things on my computer, and 20 minutes before the meeting, I started opening them up so that when I got ready to start my screen share, I would just have to click screen share, and there would be this nice page with 10 things all open. Unfortunately, when you open it up, there's only about 4 or 5 things that are open, because when you open it, there's other things that are already automatically open, like the whiteboard, for example. There's a couple of things like that. So what I decided that I'm going to do from now on is to make a Word file, and I'm going to look at my agenda, and if there is a photograph of, say, a block of the month winner, or door prizes, that kind of thing. I'm going to put them in that file in order, so that as right now I'm following along on a open Word document, a PowerPoint document that you can't see. It's in front, so half of you are blocked, but I can read this document. And like when I stopped and did those screen shares, I can embed those pictures and things I want to share in my agenda, and then do a screen share at that time. The one thing that I'm going to do is make sure that none of my notes are on that same page, so that when it comes up, they're just seeing what I intended for them to screen share. But that, I think, is going to help me a lot. That caused a couple of minutes panic when I had somebody emailing me and somebody calling me, both saying, I can't find the login information. So what do I do? At the same time, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get all the screen shares open. So all of the items were open, but unfortunately, they were little tabs down at the bottom. And I label all of my files with the initials of our guild. So all I could see was Pax River Quilters Guild, Pax River Quilters Guild. I couldn't easily click on them to pull up a calendar or a block of the month kind of thing. So I think this will take care of that problem for me. Then let's see. One thing that I would do that I did not do before is turn off the sound notifications, so that when somebody comes into the meeting, let's say they've been struggling trying to get in, and your co-host is going to let them in 5 minutes late and you've already started, that you're not hearing that little doorbell going off as they're being admitted. So if you turn it off, the host and the co-host will still be able to hear, but the participants won't be able to. That's all that I had prepared. If anyone has any questions.
Okay, let's start with Cecilia and then do Marilyn. And you'll need to unmute yourselves, please.
Okay. I was wondering, do you allow private chats?
That's one of the things that on my next one, we're going to turn that off. My fear with that is, because I was in a fraternity meeting when we started this back in April, and someone made a comment about someone's grave roots showing. And it started out private and became public, and they didn't. So in my opinion, we're in a meeting. We don't encourage whispering at meetings anyway. So to me, that's a whispering. Yeah. So we're going to turn that off.
Okay. Thank you. My question is, I ran into, kind of going back to what Tammy said in the very beginning, is, you know, some people just use a flip phone and can send pictures and don't do internet or don't have access technology wise. I ran into that the other day. I was calling somebody to ask them about something. She goes, "Oh, I don't do any of that stuff." I was like, "Oh my gosh." So how do you address that situation about keeping people involved who are not technically savvy or don't have the tools?
So even people with flip phones can call into a Zoom meeting.
Okay.
They'll be able to hear, but they will not be able to see. That's the only thing. So to help some of those people, what we do is with our newsletter, we're now going to have to send out a list of photos of anything that we're going to show or we did show in the last or ready for the upcoming meeting, so that we have 9 people out of 97 who do not have email, they've got flip phones, they don't. So that's the only thing that we can do. That we struggled with that at the beginning because we wanted to try to be fair to all and give everyone the same program, but we just can't. And if we could make it so that they could only call in, but that wouldn't be fair to those who are, ready to participate at a higher level.
Right. So the other solution that I've heard from a couple of groups is they either did a technology roundup, like donate your old whatever, smartphone or whatever, and pass it down the line. And then they said, if that person has access to a family member who has a device and that they can physically be in contact with, to maybe try that. It's just a suggestion.
And we tried that too. So we asked when, one of the questions in our interview that we did was, do you have access to the internet? Have you ever been on Zoom? That kind of thing. And we had, those same people came back and said no. So, well, do you have anyone who could help you? Maybe your grandson, or maybe a church member, or somebody who checks in with you. No. Well, we had the first meeting and somebody heard how great it turned out. And she all of a sudden has a grandson, what a miracle, who is going to come and teach her how to do it for the next meeting. So once you wave that carrot in front of their nose and they realize they're really missing out on something, I think they will start trying to get more.
Yeah. And also, just, I don't know how you feel about this, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but some of the information that you were sharing with your guild the very beginning, like a month in advance, you gave them guidelines, and then if there's any way you'd be willing to share that, I'd appreciate it, because our first meeting is going to be in September, and I just,
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Trust me, it took me 5 hours to sit down and type up.
I'll bet.
It's 4 pages of this device and that device, and so if it helps anybody else, sure.
I think Rana has that too. I should like get a file together or something, or a links or somewhere. Do you have it actually on your website? Are you the guild's website? Are you thinking about maybe putting it there? No. Okay.
No, I have it. Let's see. I don't know if it's on this drive or not. The problem is I have one computer that gets all the email and one that we do everything else on. So it's not on this thumb drive. But I can always send it to you if you don't mind distributing it to anyone who wants it.
Sure.
Thank you.
But and
It sounded good.
I tried to make it as simple as possible. And to cover my goal was to cover every possible scenario, so I would not get 40 phone calls that night, because nobody else. I'm the tech person. And I'm not a great tech person, but I can't do that and run the beginning of the meeting and have 20 minutes into it, people still trying to get in. But I did not want to exclude people either. So with the first one, we did 2 2-hour sessions on the Friday and the Saturday, and had our meeting on Monday. This next time, I'm going to do 1 2-hour session on Sunday afternoon, the day before. And I've told people, if you had a good time, call the people you know that didn't come on and get them to come to that session. Or you create a 40-minute free session so that you know how to do it, and get them on, and you two sit and chat and have a good time. So that's the way to help too. But I think we had the first day we had 20 people who signed on, and the next day 8, or no, something like that. But it was funny because some of the people who signed on the first day, it was a 2-hour slot, and we said, you just need to come on, stay 5 minutes. I'll tell you where these things are. If you want to bounce out and come back in, that's great. I had people who came and stayed the whole 2 hours, and 2 ladies came back the next day and stayed the whole 2 hours and just watched what was going on and saw the faces and had a good time. So
exactly. That is a really, really good point. They just want to, people just want to see each other. And even a practice session is a great way to draw them in, because it's not a lot of pressure, nothing is expected. You don't have to hold anything up. Just come say hi, FaceTime, with your friends. And
to help that, I'm hoping to, but right in the middle, right between our 2 meetings, I'm hoping to have a weeknight where I'm going to have a Quilto, which is our bingo. I don't know if when you guys play it, you have a form with a list of all the words and you fill in the form yourself with all quilting terms. Have you ever done that?
No. What?
Oh, I need to get you one of those forms. It's so cool. It's got all the quilting terms on it, and the blocks are all empty except the center, and everyone picks their own words and makes up their own board. So you don't have to worry about getting different boards to different people, but it's all quilting terms.
Oh
And
yeah, so Rana was talking about that the other day. I like the way you're describing it though. That sounds pretty
Yeah.
cool. She was trying to figure out how she populated all the different forms, and then she's like, okay, how do I get a different one to each person? I'm like, oh, you've got it. Just let them do it themselves.
Yeah.
yeah, and we play this at Christmas every year. And I was we called ourselves the Christmas elves. I did the Christmas party for 8 years in a row. I hate it, but they love it so much. They would sit and play like 8 games in a row if you'd let them. So we're going to send that out with the newsletter, so everybody will have it, even the people who are not on the computer. And even those people can sit on the phone with a flip phone and play Quilto. And then we've got a whole box full of fat quarters that somebody donated. There's probably 60 fat quarters. And we're just going to play and hand out fat quarters to the winners. Maybe we might do little bundles of 3 or 4. We haven't decided yet. But I think we're going to try to do that in like 2 weeks and see how that goes. And that would be a good test also to get somebody in. And then we might play a couple of games. And then if we only have, say, 15 people, we might go ahead and just do 2 breakout rooms, which that's one thing I was going to add to that, is that I used my board meeting on Monday night as a practice for breakout rooms and for polls, and it went great. I couldn't see them because the poll was up in front, but I asked 2 questions because you can do single answer questions or multiple choice questions. And I did the first one, what's your favorite ice cream? And then I did, what's your favorite toppings? Pick as many as you like. And I put all this list. And when I brought the results back down and I could see their faces, they were all sitting there just smiling. I don't know why, but they just so enjoyed being able to do some kind of an interaction like that. But the board meeting's a great place to test things and just tell them, hey, you're going along for a ride for a couple of minutes. And it worked out great. So we feel very confident going into our first meeting, having breakout rooms. And we determined that night that we feel for our group that about 6 people is going to be the max that we're going to put in a breakout room. I don't know if any of you have ever done it, but when you have the option, when you click on it, it comes up and says you have this many people, how many rooms would you want? And if you have 25 people and you say 5 rooms, it'll tell you at the bottom, that will put 4 to 5 people per room, and then it will assign it. So if you put in 2 fewer rooms, you could end up with 8 or 9 people. So you just tweak that number until you get the number of people per room that you want, and then you send them out to it. It only takes a couple of seconds to do. And they enjoyed it. We gave them a couple of questions to sit and chat about. I don't think they chatted about those topics at all. They were just sitting there having a good time chatting anyway. So, but we feel very good about launching it now with our guild the next time. And we're going to wait and get all the business done, make them behave, and then that will be the reward at the end.
Good plan. That's a really good plan. I like that. Leave it to the end. That's really good. Linda, so you're muted. There you go.
I unmute. You mentioned about the Google Drive in that, and I ended up doing a slideshow this time. I had people send me pictures for show and tell, and I made a slideshow. I'd never used Google Slides before, but I was able to pull it off. And you said about putting it on so you can share it. Is there a way that if I have like a Google slideshow, I could give people a link to go look at it? Or I don't know how that works.
So each one of those files has a location. When you open it up, you're going to have the locations across the top. And I want to say that when I did the Google Forms, it actually had a spot that you clicked on that said, here, produce a shareable link. And that was when so there's Google Forms, which you can create a poll on or a ballot. And then there is Jot Forms. And what I thought, this is just so cool. We actually did, and I might be able to open it up. We did a 2-color quilt challenge, and we need to go ahead and get this thing finished. So I want to desperately get people to vote on this thing. So I went in and I created what I thought was going to be a great ballot for people. And then I realized after I got into it, created the whole thing, liked what it looked like, I realized that there's a place on it where you can actually see how everybody else voted. So let's see, I'll do a screen share. I just opened it up. So this is what it looks like in Google Drive. So when I click on this, it will bring it up and show you, this is the ballot. That was a graphic that they had, a canned graphic that I chose. I thought it kind of, since it's a 2-color challenge. And I have it on here so that they'll enter an email address. And that lets me know that one person didn't vote 3 times. But the problem is, and so here we have 2 categories, a large quilt and a small quilt size. So one's going to be numbers and one's letters. So they would enter their letter and their number from having looked at those 2 slideshows. And then they will click send up here. Well, the problem is if you go right here to responses, it shows, if there were responses to this, it shows the responses and who said what. And I don't want Susie to know that, Donna didn't vote for hers if it's her best friend and, that kind of thing. So we ended up going with the Jot Forms that looks almost identical to that. Honestly identical, except that it doesn't automatically go into Drive. You would have to move it over into Drive if you want to put it there.
And I think Stephania has a question. She has her hand up for something. You're muted.
Okay, just a couple things. One, when we're talking about chats, when I've noticed at several of the meetings I've been at, people fill all kinds of things out in the chats. Sometimes they make comments and stuff like that about other things, whatever, or they try to, one time with the teachers, they were always trying to remind everybody what they did. But also chats, they ask for links and stuff if we're referring to something. And so what we do is that we tell people ahead of time that any links that we're going to be sharing with you is where to go or whatever, that we'll send that out. We were trying to put in the chats, but then it ends up being kind of lost and people go, now where are the chats and stuff? And so we do send a lot of things after the meeting where people are interested in, like I say, what's that block from what place on the internet and stuff like that. So we send the links out afterwards. They end up in people asking for in chats. And the other thing is that we now have a form that we use in our meetings. It's etiquette for attendees. We also have an etiquette for participants. And then we found that helps out a whole lot. So we automatically send it out with the invitation to the meeting, this document. So people remember to make sure that if you got a dog that barks a lot, that he's not in the same room, or all kinds of things. But it's about 7 or 8 things to remember to do. And like, for instance, go to the restroom before you sit down, because these can be a little bit longer. But it's not quite so much. It's just more ways to make things go smoothly for everybody. And not interrupting, using the thing where you raise your hand, that helps a lot, rather than people just raising their hand and you gotta remember who it is. So we have the etiquette form that we send out, and any links or things like that, we send it out afterwards. And we go through the chats and figure out what were the things they were asking for. But there's a lot of people just making comments about things that sometimes I kind of looked at them and kind of going, so yeah, remind people then in the chat, so when you're doing the chats, that if it's recorded, everybody's going to hear, like what you were talking about. But they also, you find out what they really want and need too through the chat. So and the comments they make about all the things you're bringing up. That helps in planning in the future.
So I was in a meeting last night and I learned 2 very important things in that meeting. There's a guild in Chicago where one of our guild members' mom is a member there. And because they were doing their second Zoom meeting, and I said, oh, I would be interested in seeing that, they invited me to come to it. So I did. But it was a 2-hour-long thing. So you definitely have, well, I learned 3 things last night. You have to have a break.
Yeah.
Or you can tell people, if you need to get up and move around your room, just cut your video off. You can stand behind your chair, stretch your back, do whatever. But when they first started their meeting, the president was on, and she had made this really cute needle case. And she's trying to show it. She said, oh, I know, there were 36 people at this meeting. So all the pictures were much smaller than this. And she's going, I know you can't see this from looking at it. No one had ever figured out that there was a speaker mode at speaker view, and that you could actually see, and so I raised my hand and told them, and she went, what, where is it? And then she showed it all over again. But I think we researched the heck out of this before we had our first meeting. And I think that's the key, getting into it and playing and saying, oh, well, you can't see this very well. What can we do about that? So playing around and figuring out what works and what doesn't ahead of time will make things go a lot smoother. And it makes you look a lot more professional and slick and like you know what you're doing. Little do they know, you panicked 5 minutes before the meeting started because you couldn't open everything on your screen. They don't need to know that. But the other thing was that we got a horrible thunderstorm, one of the worst thunderstorms we've had in 10 years. And even though I was hardwired, the electricity went out. I got booted out of the meeting. I went back into the meeting and they let me in. I got booted out one more time. But if that had been a meeting here at home and I were the president, I were leading it, it just showed me how important it is that we have somebody with backup who can carry on until you can get back into your meeting and then see where they are, and then you can pick up and carry on. Otherwise, they're going to all be sitting there going, well, what do we do? Is it over? I guess we leave, because my router didn't come back for a few minutes. So the whole meeting could have fallen apart if I had been the person leading it. Luckily, I didn't. But by that time, I thought it was almost over, and I didn't go back to it because I didn't want to bother them, you know, two hours into it. So
I was on our council meeting for Southern California Council Quilt Guilds that we were showing everybody how guilds can use Zoom in all kinds of different ways. And when we had all of our planning sessions, basically we had 6 or 7 planning sessions. We not only had a tech team of 6 different people, each had a different job. And then we also had on our form that we made the backup for that person, you know, for whatever couldn't do it, or like the internet went out or whatever. We had backups for everything because we, of course, had 150 some people there. But so yeah, make sure you have backups. Make sure that the tech team is really important and know what they're doing. I'm training a new guild now that is not very techy, and so I'm having to work on that and let them know that we got to do all this stuff to make it work right.
Exactly. Vicki, you had a question too?
Yeah. We had one little issue on our meeting where when I was in the speaker view, you call it, so whoever's speaking is the big picture and then everybody else is the little picture. Okay. We had an individual who did a show and tell, and they were in the big screen. And then when it went back to the host to continue the meeting, the big screen stayed on the individual who did the show and tell. Is that something the host has to switch back?
It depends, really.
Isn't that where they pinned it?
It depends on what they did to make it happen. Exactly. Most of the time, each of us has control of what we're looking at. So as the host, I could pick one person, and I'll pick on Tammy here, and I could say, put her in the spotlight. Okay? So she's the picture. However, if you touch your controls wherever they are and say, I want gallery view, you can put it right back on gallery view.
Yeah,
right?
From what I can see, those are my only 2 options. A speaker view with, you know, everybody else tiny, or gallery view where everybody's the same.
Right. But if you put it on gallery view, you just overrode me putting her in the spotlight. So you understand what I'm saying? Each person has control. So the other option, besides the host putting someone on spotlight, is you ask the participants each to pin the speaker. And that's a different process. And it's different depending on the device you use. So I'm on a PC, a laptop, and I put my mouse right over Tammy's face. My mouse is right over her face. And I've been told on the iPad, you tap twice. And I get a blue button that pops up with 3 little dots, and it says pin video.
Yeah, I see that.
If I pin her, it does the exact same thing, puts her front and center. Now, the reason that Spotlight is good but not great is people tend to want to say, oh yes, oh I agree, oh that's so beautiful, oh yeah, and the minute they talk, that speaker view thing goes away, and it interrupts the sound from the speaker. So when you have a presentation going, mute all except for the speaker, and asking people to pin the speaker themselves, it seems like are probably the best way to keep that person front and center. And it shows too that each of us has control ourselves over what we're looking at, because sometimes even though I'm watching a big presentation, I don't want it. I want I want the gallery.
If we mute everyone, then it should, in theory, stay on the speaker while they're talking.
It should, except for, like you said, when someone comes in and goes, I made it.
Yes, yes. And that's why if you, as you're setting up, oh, that's one other thing. As you're setting up your meeting, you can say in it on your master, I think it's on the main screens. Because there's basic controls and there's advanced controls. That's where you can turn on things like doing chat rooms and doing polls for that particular meeting. But I think it's on the main page where you sign up, it'll say right on there to mute all upon entry. So yes. Click that. So if you find your next meeting you set up, you've turned on everything that you want and go, wow, that was perfect. I got everything right. They were all turned on to what I wanted them to be. You can go back to that meeting and click edit and make it a template for all your future guild meetings, so you don't have to remember, and next time you don't go, I forgot to mute everybody on entry. And that way then it's a piece of cake when you go to build your next guild meeting. You just pick that template.
I love the templates. I totally love the templates. I have them set up for every kind of meeting that I run. Some are auto-recorded, all of mine are mute upon entry. But you're right, it's in every meeting setting. But once you create that template, it's like 3 or 4 clicks to create a meeting, instead of filling out all those details, making sure you've clicked everything the right way. Totally in love with that functionality.
So there's one other thing that we decided to do, just so we weren't shooting ourselves in the foot every single month. Most of the people we have getting on are going to be on a PC, and they're going to be using a Word password. We're using the same password every single month for our board meeting, or our guild meeting. And we'll use the same one for our board meeting too. So if they're going to get on, the only thing that's going to change is their meeting number. And that way then there's no, oh, wait a minute, was it supposed to be a capital T? Or it's the same password, all lowercase. The only problem is that when the people calling in on the cell phones, you can't change that password to anything that you want it to be. They're going to assign a 6-digit number for the phone login. And there's nothing you can, I've researched it. I wanted so badly to make it that same word, and I can't find a place to do it.
So the other thing, are you using recurring meetings? Because you get the same link doing that. Well, so just to let you know, if you set up your meetings as recurring meetings, it's the same link. And I love that.
I do one of my college ones like that. The only thing is, so maybe you can tell me this. The friend who's doing it set it up that we register. Is that automatically a part of recurring? Or is that 2 separate things? He just happened to make a recurring meeting that requires registration.
I'm not sure if I'm following you right, because they're really 2 separate things.
I know I don't know if, because I've never done a recurring meeting, is that something that he just said in his recurring meeting I want done, or is it a part of recurring meetings?
Oh, no, it's an option. It's just a check mark, okay. Just like everything else, right?
Then I might look at that then, but I did not want to add the extra step of doing a registration.
Exactly.
And some people who are having a hard enough time with just a password and, wait a minute, what is this? What do I have to do? So I'm trying to keep it as simple but as secure as possible.
Yeah. So here's a little trick that I use too. I'm sorry, Marilyn, did you have something?
Just real quick, Tammy, why would you use a password and meeting ID as opposed to sending a link out that has it embedded? Like when we get on Margarita's meeting, we just click the link and it's embedded in the link.
We do that too, but suppose it's on your home computer and you're going to be at your daughter's house for the night and you're on your iPad. If you have the meeting ID number and the password, you can just enter it, but you might not have the link with you. Like I said, I get my emails on another computer. So to come into this meeting, I had to forward it. So it from my files into this, and because I don't do my emails on this. So it still will be embedded in it, and there will be a one-time link if they choose to use it. But some of them want that meeting ID. It just
Okay. You're trying to make everybody happy. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Good for you.
Okay. We ran into a problem with, I had a Quilt Guild, a local Quilt Guild meeting, and we were sent out, the link, and we went to sign up, and then we couldn't get in. We said it required a password, and so Pam, our techie person, said now they're suddenly requiring, even on regular meetings, non-registered, that you have to have a password to get in. So she had to send us all the password.
Well, and when you set up the meeting, and Tammy will tell you more about this too, I think, it's in my settings, and it's when I create a meeting, I embed the password. I don't want people having to type that thing out unless they're calling in. There's no way to get around it if they're calling in.
Okay.
So Tammy, do you have any experience different from that?
No, because when you go and you hit, is there any of you who've never created your own meeting? Okay, so you know that once you've done it, okay, so you create your meeting, and then once you say that, yes, save it, there's a button that you click that says copy the invitation. And when you see that, that's what's going to have your links, and that's what you can put into a newsletter or into an email or however you want to get it to them. So
but in your settings, you have to say embed the password with the link. It's part of the settings for your meetings. I'm not sure if it's a general setting on the main settings page or if it goes with each meeting you create, but it is in there so that you don't have to.
In the basics, which is a link on the side, or there's also advanced, which is where I think it must be in basics. The one thing that I do with the email too, when I go to send it with that copy, the invitation, it has on there, call in this number if you're in Texas, this number if you're in blah, blah. I take all the ones out that do not apply to my county and scrap them.
Yep.
And I change it and will say, join by computer this way, join by phone this way, trying to dumb it up as much as I can so that there is no tripping over it. There's as easy as possible.
In fact, I was doing the same thing, and I have a little text file that I keep right on my desktop, and I would add this verbiage that said every single time, on the day of the meeting, at the time it is scheduled for, click this link. And then it said, you will be in a secure waiting area. That was kind of a little secure waiting area until the meeting begins. And that was kind of my way of hand holding people to get to that point, because even if you're brand new, you get to that waiting room and you're like, I did something wrong, and you just start clicking things, so I wanted them to have kind of that step-by-step. Plus I was getting a lot of early link clickers.
I was in one of your meetings and somebody tried to email in to get in early. I think it was this last Monday. They were going to try to come to my board meeting later in the day. They called in or tried to join, and it came up with, your host is in another meeting. And they called me up on my phone in the middle of your meeting to go, what's wrong? I can't get in. What's going on? And I'm like, well, it said I was in another meeting. I was in another meeting. Ours doesn't start until I haven't opened it yet. So you see all kinds of crazy stuff.
Absolutely. That's a new one on me. Your host is in another meeting. Well, that was kind of none of their business. Oh well. Oh my goodness. Fielding any more questions? This has been awesome. Absolutely awesome. Tammy, tell us your guild one more time so everybody can go look it up and visit your website, and we'll work on those documents as a doc share. I cannot thank you enough. This is absolutely a wonderful resource for so many guilds that are going to watch this recording. Absolutely.
So we're Pax River Quilters Guild. We're actually on the Patuxent River, right next to where it opens out into the Chesapeake Bay. We've been
How do you spell PAX?
PAX.
PAX is in peace.
Stands for Patuxent, but Pax River Quilters Guild. And I can't say we have the most impressive website. We do not have in-house technology to be able to do it ourselves. So we have a man who lives out in California, a friend of a friend, who does it for us. And we've just recently, when I became president, I got tired of looking at the same pictures that have been on that website since it was created 10 years ago. So I figured out a way, working with this young man, to use Albumizer, if you've ever heard of that. So it's a place to store photos, and he embedded it in our website so I can go and drop pictures into it, and it automatically puts them in the website. So I don't have to pay him once a month to go and update our pictures. And we were trying to get a place to put a calendar in there as well without paying him to change it every month. So I have to create it in Word and then save it as a PDF, and I insert it as a picture, and that's how I get my calendar updated. But it doesn't cost us anything, and it works. So
any last questions for Tammy? Thank you very much for everything that you shared today. It was absolutely wonderful. I really
Thank you very much.
Thank you for holding this this meeting.
Absolutely.
And then also, if you want something about meeting templates, Margarita's got I took her class on doing how to do a meeting template. It was invaluable.
Okay.
We'll run that one again.
Oh, yeah, I think people still need it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Tammy.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Margarita.
Thank you so much. Wonderful
Thanks so
seeing
much.
everyone. I'll see you soon.